So, excuse me. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
We are building in public.
We are
That's how we are.
very, yeah, all the scrapes and bumps and bruises along the way, for sure.
Yep, for sure. I did last night um, restart my computer and clean my PC and like a whole bunch of stuff last night for about an hour and a half,
Hmm.
um, just because I'd gotten home from a trip and was just kind of decompressing and unloading the bags and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm just going to put my computer on clean and let it do its thing. And I'm glad I did. Um, because sometimes it just spits in your face.
Yeah, like I walked in this morning, I was like, cool, I've got about 5 minutes, set up my lights, do all that stuff, move the desk back to work mode, not gaming mode.
Yep.
And then it wasn't doing the loud humming thing that it does whenever it's like over it. So I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna be able to get in here. No, not so much. Slack wasn't working and links weren't working, and this version of Chrome wouldn't decouple from another. Oh my god, it was a nightmare. So I had to restart. So we're running a little bit late.
Yep. Yep.
But I think most
Oh,
people
good.
are running slow today in the first Monday after Thanksgiving break.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I know. I guess. Yeah. When I would come into work after holidays, I typically didn't have a ton of issues, but I definitely felt like I was going slower each time I
Yeah,
did it. Yeah.
I have a thing, and this is interesting. I don't really think I talk about this a whole lot. Um, After I didn't really do much on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? And that strung together period of days makes it harder for me to want to come back to work today on Monday than if I had just done a little bit on Wednesday, a little bit on Thursday, a little bit on
Hmm.
Friday, right? And
Hmm.
I was thinking about this just last night, how resistant I was to like coming back and getting back in the saddle today. And it's just because of so many days of not chopping wood and carrying water.
Yeah, that's a good point. And somehow too, mindset is a big part of it because if I go on a vacation and it's like I'm going on vacation, when I come back, I have less problems because I'm like, okay,
Yes.
vacation's over.
Hmm.
But like when it's something like this where like it's a holiday and you are going to be resting, but there's not like
Yep.
this set vacation mentality.
Yeah.
It's
Like
different.
uh I'm how to say this the right way without sounding like an idiot. I uh
Sort of like,
I am pretty good about creating habits that allow me to get more done, right? So 4 days in a row, I'm not doing much work stuff, but I'm still here in my regular kind of area and territory and atmosphere. I'm already starting to be like, man, wouldn't it be great to not have to do this
right.
all every day? Like, and then I start to think too much about that. Whereas, it's just work. Like the only reason that I'm wanting to be resistant about it is because I'm thinking about not doing it, right? Whereas if I just lean into it and do it, it's fine.
That's all right. Yep.
So
Yep. Brain tells it does what you tell it to do.
yes, it does.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. We don't tell it what to do a lot of times. So then it does its own thing.
Yeah, we just let it tell us what to do. There we
Mhm.
go. I
And
think
it's
that's
just
the appropriate
responding
phrasing.
at that point. So
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
And what's funny, I was talking to my girlfriend, and she had been off working out for a few weeks now, maybe 3 weeks now, because she had been sick and she had
Hmm.
just it just been dragging out in her energy level. And she was like, "How long before the body like starts, you know, forgetting what you've taught it?" And I was like, "Well, you don't." I'm not gonna like the answer to this because the answer is right away. But the major fall off starts, in 3 to 4 weeks is where the major, you
Hmm.
start getting losses. So I was like, as long as you can keep it under 2 weeks, most of the time you can keep everything of what you've gained, most of it. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's like the next day. It's called
yeah.
recovery, and then
I
the day after that, it's yeah.
I used to, whenever I was younger and training in martial arts, this didn't really happen a whole lot in Wing Chun, but I would see it like in other arts and styles. People would be away from the art for a while, and they would come back and they would demote themselves down a level, right?
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
happens a lot in jujitsu. I always thought that was kind of like a weird thing to do, but now I think about it massively differently because you know I still know all the Wing Chun that I've like learned, right? And I still practice, but I'm not putting in the 17 to 20 hours a week that I was doing over there. So for me to walk around and think that my stuff is still as tight and as good and as sharp as it was when I was doing that is
Yeah.
just ego.
Yeah.
Is just ego,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so now I get it. Like you want to have an appropriate feedback loop. Like, are you telling yourself BS or are you telling yourself the honest truth? And
Mhm.
skills degrade, right? If you're a leader who hasn't led anyone in like a couple of years, guess what? Those skills degrade, right? If you've not been selling your conversational skills, they're going to degrade. If you've not been marketing and writing and doing market research and writing to an audience and doing all these other things that you're supposed to do, you're going to be worse at it when you come back to it, right? You have to go through the process of getting back in the pocket again.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, like,
Don't
and
fool ourselves.
there's versions of this, right? Because like you'll see it on LinkedIn where someone will talk about, that they're posting very regularly and then they take a break and it's hard to come back, right?
Mhm.
There's a little bit of resistance,
Yep.
and you see this all the time with like prospectors. They've not prospected or cold called for a little bit and they come back and it's a little bit uncomfortable because they've forgotten that it's not that bad, So there's little bitty versions of this and everything that we do, but time away creates rust.
Yep. Rust is the word I like the best because you can knock rust off and
Yeah,
clean it off, and as long as you don't leave it there for a long time, it doesn't really hurt you. But
absolutely. Yeah.
but it does slow you down to start.
Q, the guy that I play games with, very, very good at the game that we play together. And he was out all last week because he was traveling. And so he came back yesterday. We gamed most of the day. Just talking about how rusty he was, right? In his first two games, that was true, but by the third game, not so much anymore. So there is something to be said around the idea that the more you train in a lump sum at an appropriate depth, the faster the rest comes off, the less you have to do to get back to that place of
Mhm.
kind of peak performance. But that requires that's where we're getting into the 10,000 hour territory, which I don't really think you need if you have a good coach and good practice and very thoughtful about your path and everything. But if you want to be able to take long gaps away, you're going to have to do more of the nourishing the garden kind of situation.
Yeah, for sure. And which is, I think, a pretty good argument for not being a generalist is because you can't do all the
Yeah,
things you need to do to stay proficient at all the things.
yeah,
You got to have a few that you're pretty dang good at. Otherwise, you just can't
agreed.
all that.
Yeah,
Speaking of specialists, you and I
yeah,
are going to be more specialist about our conversations.
yes, we are.
So, oh, by
Yeah,
the way, Mike Tao, what's up, man? I put you up
what's
on
up,
the
Mike
screen.
Tao?
What's going on, man? How was your holiday? Are you having trouble getting back in the saddle today? I'm curious. Mr. Regular, I wonder if he's.
I bet Mike Tao says no. Mike Tao just has this quality about him that he just does the work.
Time to go to work.
Yeah, time to
It's
make the
time to make the
donuts.
donuts.
Yeah, like I don't think he holds any avoidance or anything. I think he just shows up and does his thing.
Superhero.
It
Has a superpower for sure.
is a superpower for sure.
Yep. Yeah, but so the title of our thing that I made it today when we came up here was building in public, because when we started, I mean, that was kind of like, I'm talking COVID when we started. Yeah, I don't take that much of a break. Okay, so that's how he does it. He doesn't ever go on vacation. Okay, I see. Got it. 10-4. Yeah, we started by building in public. We were like, hey, let's do this thing. Let's show people what we're doing, and let's try and show as much of it as we can, not just the cool fun parts. And so we have 2 years. Is that? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's 2020. It's been 2 years since that happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've had a couple iterations of Morning Bill. The first one, which was just kind of the everything out there. Hey guys, so here's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then this version, which has kind of been like a little bit of a hybrid approach, but still largely that, right? I mean, which is just like, hey, here's what's going on, and changed less from an open accountability model and more to an open, like, showing how we're working model.
Yeah.
But we've had discussions and we're we're going to make some more changes. Hey, Dylan, what's going on, man?
Good morning, Dylan. Yes, the first version was a friend of mine in poker who talks about this all the time. He's like, poker is very forgiving as long as you don't go broke, right? And entrepreneurship is very similar in that way. Don't go broke. Don't go get the job. Don't take the job, right? Figure out a way that you can stay out on your own if it's important enough to you, right? And not your ego, but the thing that you're trying to actually work on, right? Because
the project.
Yeah, like doing this for your ego, in my opinion, isn't the right motivation, right? And you're not going to kind of stay through like the tough times, right? Like it has to be in relation to a purpose, in my opinion. That's where Start With Why comes in and all this other stuff. And so I would say that the first version of Morning Bill was like, can Jake and John make it through kind of situation? You know, can we make it through this terribly lean time and figure out like what the hell we're supposed to be doing? Second one is much more about, you know, okay, cool. Here's what I'm working on. Okay, here's how we can improve this thing, you know, for each other and stuff like that. And now I think we're moving into a new phase, which is cool and I'm excited about.
Yeah, it's kind of like a business, right? Like to your point, Mike, you stay and you grind it out when you're either a new entrepreneur or you're an entrepreneur that's been around, but you've got tough times. You're just kind of going down to minimum services or kind of whatever makes the most sense, or you're finding new ways to make money based on circumstances and things like that aren't necessarily tied directly to the purpose you started with. But just to keep going. So, and what's interesting is, I mean, we're kind of entering a similar time like that. Not the same as COVID with, you know, recession stuff going on. Everybody's been stuff we can talk about too separately, right? Than this topic, but you know, there's a lot of people out there trying to figure out some of that similar stuff right now.
Agreed.
Figure out how to make things stick. But anytime you have, like in a business, you have phases and you figure some things out and you go, we should do more of this because this seems to take us someplace we like going.
Yeah.
So that's partially where we're at on this.
No, things are good. Things are good.
So we're pivoting.
Go ahead.
No,
Stop teasing.
So go ahead. We're just pivoting. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. The goal of this show is to show people like what we're working on, right? Like fundamentally, right? Because we both enjoy the idea of kind of showing people that like it's not all fun stuff and, you know, swag baskets and, you know, interviews and everything, you know, like this is hard, you know, it's hard to go out and like launch your own thing and deal with everything that comes along with it. And we like showing that part of it. So the goal is to continue to show that stuff, but also show people the parts of our craft that we're both working on, right? Which is like networking, asking questions, interviewing, becoming creators, and everything else like that. So the new version that we're going to be moving to is we're going to be having an actual produced podcast interview that we're going to be launching each week that kind of matches up with a topic that we talk about on Monday mornings, and then Friday afternoons is when we kind of do so we're moving from Friday mornings to Friday afternoons on the back part of the week. On the back part of the week, we're going to talk about that podcast episode that launches that week. So we're going to have 2 live streams and a podcast each week, and they're all going to be tied around a theme. So that's the kind of the next level that we're moving into this thing from.
Yep. And then specifically, one of the things that John and I for years have been talking about and love to just stir people up, honestly, about is that marketing and sales are on the same team, or they should be.
Yes, they should be.
And that we're all having a conversation with the same person. It's just, why don't more people spend time helping each other in the process? And the reason is because it's set up for us to be like this in most places you go. And my dad asked me this weekend, he was like, where do you think that started? Why do you think it ever even got to that? Because you're all just trying to get people on the door to make money, you know? And so I don't know. That's a good research piece to maybe go do some more reading on. But at the end of the day, we want people to all kind of row in the same direction and know that I grew up as a marketer and John grew up as a salesperson, and we have now both spent a fair amount of time in each other's worlds and understand that and go, gosh, if I knew more what the salespeople we're talking about with customers, I'd be better at targeting. and vice versa. So
vice versa, right? Like, as opposed to complaining about how marketing has never sent you an actual qualified lead, why don't you go sit down with them and talk to them about what a qualified lead actually looks like, and so that way they have a better shot at doing it, as opposed to just complaining with you and your sales buddies that the marketing doesn't help. Good marketing makes your job so much easier, right? And it's just pure ego and immaturity that, that makes these two teams want to run independently, as opposed to really kind of breaking down the wall and figuring out how to work on this thing together, because your salespeople are figuring out why these deals are not going anywhere. Your marketers are thinking about like how to get ease to the meetings, to the demos, to the late stages of the processes. Fighting it out amongst each other is just holding everybody in the same place. And I was posting about this last week. If the recession is coming, it's not going to be like the pandemic was. The pandemic was like this really unique kind of situation that everyone got to use. Like, hey, how you doing? Like, in a recession, people don't really understand that things have changed. Things are just tighter, and they can't really understand why. And their ability to want to come look at demos and new tech and new services is going to be zilch. It's going to be absolutely nothing. You're not going to be able to lean in on the stuff of like, well, hey, is there like are you holding it together in these trying times?
Right.
It's going to feel like business as usual to these people. And if you don't have relationships with them, you're not getting anywhere. Promise. Like, it's not about the guarantees. It's not about the risk reversal. It's not about, how you can save them time, money, and value. It's about providing ease during these kinds of times. And if you don't pivot to that kind of like messaging and positioning, I think you're going to struggle a lot. And salespeople who are just wanting to be transactional are going to struggle a lot. So,
Yep. There's a lot of turnover in recessions around sales, particularly. Because people hop from job to job to try and find the one that will be easier for them to sell during the recession. And
you look at these companies that are having these huge layoffs of like sales folks. Like, say sales is first, and then marketing will be next. Whenever like it's not as clear cut where the ROI is on these huge teams and stuff like that. So I do think that is going to be happening. You gotta be prepared, because it's not it's not ever gonna feel like the last thing did. It's not even gonna feel exactly like 2008, where like everyone has got all this stuff to talk about around like the mortgage crisis and stuff like that. It's gonna feel different, right? And people are gonna experience it different. So lean into your networking and your relationships. Don't try to get lost in the pure volume play, because it's not going to work, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's where if you don't understand what's going on, then you can't adjust accordingly. You just throw your fist at the sky and be like, why aren't these people closing? You're like, well,
exactly.
Maybe sit back and think about it like a customer. And I'm already seeing it in some of our clients. So it's already happening. I've already seen salespeople laid off in the last 30 days. I've already seen marketing budgets tighten up in the last 30 days. So it's here. You
see these companies who aren't experiencing loss, right? Like Meta, Twitter, these huge companies that are laying people off are not companies that have actually been hit with this stuff yet, right? They just see the writing on the wall, and they're trying to what is that thing that you do on a ship? Batten the castles or something like that?
Oh, batten down the hatches?
Batten down the hatches. Thank you.
Yes.
They're going to be working on that, right? Which is why all these layoffs are happening, right? Unfortunately, sales, even though the comp is weighted to reduce risk, is still one of the very first things to go. And in some of these situations, and I saw this being discussed on social media, it's not going to be that you're going to be laid off. It's going to be that your KPIs, your activities, your goals are going to shift to like such a high level.
Yes.
That they're essentially laying you off. They just haven't told you yet.
Yeah, exactly. Which is annoying.
Yeah.
To say the least. But
yeah.
So this is the type of stuff we're going to be talking about specifically per week. We're going to pick a topic around revenue is really at the center of it. It's we're having revenue teams that involve traditional sales and marketing groups and conversion optimization groups and whoever else at the organization is involved in that process, and finding ways to unify and do more things that make money versus make your personal KPIs look better.
Yeah, when the there's this one line that I love, and I'm bastardizing the line, but if you have unlimited resources, you should win. Right? Like
Yeah.
that's not anything special to win when you have all the resources. Can you still win when you don't have all the resources? When times are tight, when like we were watching Hamilton over the weekend, like when you're working with 1/3 of what Congress has promised, like are you still able to get it done? Like are you able to outthink the problem is really kind of the situation. And I
Yeah.
think that that's going to be very interesting because I think some of these leaders are going to have to get back in the weeds as opposed to just kind of riding on top of the whole thing and just kind of like gently guiding. You're going to have to get in there and do some work, I think.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's certain industries that are, I mean, it's what economists look at, right? They're the leading indicators of
Hmm.
this is actually happening because they go first and you can see them
Yep.
happen. So some of your clients, or maybe a company you work for is one of them, are
Yeah.
just going to get punched in the mouth for the next 12 months. It's like that's just where you are.
Yep.
And you have to decide what you're going to do about that. And there's several ways to look at it, but that's the toughest spot to be.
Yeah.
Because the rest of us are seeing it and feeling it, and not happy, but we're not like just constantly getting crushed. Um, yes, that's
I mean,
fair, Joshua.
it's probably fair advice for any time period,
I mean, I don't know if you're wealthy and getting drunk every weekend. I guess there's a
like
different type of mentality to that, but
is that like the grandiose version of like shitting the bed? Like don't
yes,
shit the bed. Definitely don't shit the castle. But
yes.
like you really don't want to shit the bed.
Are you Kanye or are you Kyrie?
um, manufacturing is always a leading indicator, Mike, for sure. So yeah,
Definitely.
it's gonna be interesting over the next probably 12 to like 18 months, right? And like I wasn't really even on this train until all these huge tech companies that have not really seen any big shifts started laying people off, and now I'm like, okay, if these people are getting prepared, we should probably all be getting prepared.
Yeah, for sure. So recession we can definitely dig into because that's not going away anytime soon. So that can definitely be a topic we can interview some people on. But like you said, Mondays bring up a topic, do kind of this sort of routine where we're chatting about it. What's the issue? What are we seeing in our own stuff and in the market? And then on Wednesday, have a cool guest talk about it that can bring something unique and interesting about the topic. And then on Friday, circle back and kind of talk about the things that we observed and learned and found interesting, and maybe some things that we might try moving forward based on the discussion for the week. And that's going to be the new one, and we're renaming it, so we don't know what that's going to be yet. But it's actually going to be its own thing. So it Morning Bill will live on YouTube history archives, and we're going to move forward and be specific about
with a new name,
revenue approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to be eating our own dog food here, right? We got to come up with a name that speaks to an audience. We got to figure out which audience we're speaking to. We got to do all the stuff that we tell everyone else to do. So it'll be good.
Yes. So Dylan just started a new sales job, right? Yep. There you go. Yeah. There's a lot of people doing that though, Dylan. You're not alone, number one. And we just said too, a lot of people switch jobs during a recession. To figure out something. I think recessions can be really helpful, much like COVID was. It's just to less degree because COVID we had so much time to sit and think. But recessions you do too. You just have a little bit less than you had before. To go, this isn't a good role for me anymore, or I would prefer a role that was compensated this way, or any number of things. And you're going to see which industries right now are not bulletproof, but the ones that get through it. So.
Same hair, bro. Same hair. The hair's not coming off.
Dude,
not
if I could get hair, maybe, but it's you only got that maybe half right. Although, what's the like you shed your skin every 7 days or something? Like, so maybe there's something
like that. So did you finish the book, Play Bigger?
Oh yeah, I did. I finished it.
Okay. What final thoughts on it?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, same as you. Obviously, I've been reading about that sort of stuff for a long time, but I do like the fact that I have two major things. first was there's only first and second place, and I hate that, but I also understand it, right? And the concept was there's only really two big players in any industry who get 70-80% of the business. The easiest one to think about is Google and Bing, right? Like
Yeah.
Google has most of it; they're the category king. Bing makes a living off of 12% or 8% or whatever they are at right now.
Yeah.
And then everyone else is pretty much second or struggling to eat, like gone. Yeah. And they're making the case that most industries are this way. And so as I think about it, they're mostly right.
They are mostly right.
Right. However, I think local business is the argument against that. And you can make enough money to have a nice little shop and business in life if that's what you choose to do, right?
Yeah.
So it's just what you want to do. All right, Dylan.
Well, okay, so I think that local, that's a very interesting flavor. I think a hyper local business is part of the niche, right?
Could be,
So
unless you're just a pie shop who, because your granddad, grandma, and great grandma made pies amazingly, and you have the recipe, and you have a pie shop. You know?
Yes,
but that's different.
I agree.
But I don't think that book's talking about them.
No, I don't think so either.
It's like if you have a company that you want to grow.
Yeah, agreed. You know, they were on point with their examples. Like very, very much on point. Now, I wish there were more examples because like I was going into this book came so highly recommended to me. I was thinking it was like a blueprint. Like here's everything you need to do. And it wasn't that. It was much more of like, hey, here's the idea that you should be going for kind of situation, which is helpful, but I want tactics. I want step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And they had some of that in there, but it was I think so many people are going to try to go through that book and they're going to end up running marketing workshops. And they talk about that in the book around like, hey, don't just turn this into like a regular marketing workshop. It's like you have written this out to be like a marketing workshop unless there's something in here that I'm missing, which then makes me kind of think of like Challenger Sale and the fact that like the book is just a consulting play. And so we're just supposed to come hire you after this so that way you can help us with our lightning strikes and all that other stuff.
Bit of that, for sure.
Which I didn't really like a whole lot. It started out strong. I really liked the last aspect about applying this to like your personal brand because as someone who's kind of done some of that, I thought that was very good, actionable, you know? And like that's what I was thinking about as I was reading the book. I was like, oh, people can do this as well. And then that very last chapter was talking about how to do that for yourself. And I was like, okay, that is very interesting. Yeah, that was one of the highlights of the book for me.
For sure. I think the line that I took, I know the line that I took, I wrote it down and I'm going to go back to it is you don't be better, be different.
Yeah.
Which that's everything.
That was like Jeff beat that over the head with me. You know, he was like, man, it's not enough that they want a website. It's not enough that they have money. They have to want it the way that we do it. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? You know, and he was like, they have to want it up and they have to want, you know, all this other stuff versus just a website. You know, and he would say, if you don't know that they want it the way we do it, you're not doing good enough discovery. You're not asking enough questions. And like, that was what, 10 years ago, right? So like, I've kind of been on this path that this entire time. And my sales coach was always like, if you just show up and say why you're better, they're going to find a reason to defend themselves why their decisions were correct. So don't show up and say that you're better because you're putting pressure on them and you're putting yourself on a pedestal that's going to be indefensible, right? Yep. So how are you different than other people? And you know that.
Yeah, which is interesting because you put up a post about that old school positioning book, which I have. I actually have one of the original versions. Like I got it at Half Price Books.
Oh wow, cool.
So I guess you have maybe the updated. So I'm interested to see what changes in that. But there's a lot about that very specific thing in that book. To knowing how people are thinking, so that you can come and present yourself in a way that they automatically recognize. Which is not the same, but it's in the same arena of, you know, that's why I liked Corning Glass was my favorite example in the whole book.
Really like the Corning Glass example. Yeah.
Because they continue to reinvent themselves based on what they saw in the market and they supplied something different, which like for Gorilla Glass for iPhone.
There's also that like kind of cautionary tale, right? Because they go to them and say, hey, we want you to build the glass for this thing. And at the time, it's a shiny thing. Yeah. It is very much a shiny thing that they didn't have to go over. Apple held no market share before their phone launch. They were just like a big buzz kind of thing. Yeah. And so Corning was like, okay, cool. We have this other thing. You can use it, but but right,
Yeah.
like, and at that level, you're kind of hitching your horse to something else, and you're having to hope that like they're going to show up and do the things that
True.
that they need to be done. And I know so many entrepreneurs, right? And I've been in this spot. Hey, John, can we have Sherpa? I'm like, yeah, let's work out a licensing deal and stuff like that. And then we go through all the hoops and everything, and then they never show up with any demand,
Right.
right? And that's less likely to happen whenever it's Apple coming and knocking on your door, but it is something you
Yeah.
have to be concerned about, because who are you hitching your horse to? Kind
Yeah.
of situation.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And Joshua, this will not post. Otherwise, I would put it up there. But he basically said he was a part of a company last year where Play Bigger was a big part of it, and they didn't really get the message of the book. It sounds
Oh,
like, and they tossed 80 grand into a campaign as a lightning strike, probably, but
yeah,
didn't know what they were doing.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think,
there's so
I
many cautionary tales probably from this that people could tell from this book.
yeah, because think about all the companies they're not talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like this is hard to do, and honestly, I think direct to consumer is probably the hardest realm to do it. And I think B2B would be easier because you
Possibly.
at least know the landscape, right? I mean, I think direct to
Unless
consumer
it was
stuff would be harder.
yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, that's why Steve Jobs is held up as such a genius, and Elon Musk in certain circles and things like that, because they are doing things for the public that seem to
Yeah.
just work, and
Hmm.
no one else can duplicate it, because they're like, how are you such a visionary? Like, I don't get it. That's not a repeatable thing,
Well,
which is why I like Corning Glass. That's repeatable.
yeah, the Corning glass thing, and just breaking out. This is so weird because I'm such like a data driven person, but I'm also like a science driven person, right? If you're not putting yourself in a space to be creative, like if Corning Glass didn't have that little lab just tucked off to the side to where they're just like allowed to go play with different types of glass and different things,
Right.
we wouldn't have
Exactly.
Gorilla Glass,
Yep.
right? Because that company wouldn't be putting money into like future research and development and like the future of like their business. They're
Right.
just trying to maximize all the revenue that they can right then and right there.
Right.
That, I mean, that's the Blockbuster thing. That's all these other companies that don't happen there. So if you're not consistently putting time and effort into like R&D, new ways, new things, like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
That was the big thing that I took away from that. You should always be playing and tinkering and thinking about like what's next. You should always have that kind of ongoing category creation kind of process going if you can.
And I think what some people might miss is that they were doing it in their own category. They weren't just
Yeah.
doing it out everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like Apple did it inside of technology that was going to be more convenient for people and it was going to be attractive, and that's a good set of bounds to have creativity in.
Mhm.
Same thing with Glass. Same thing with just go across the Google has the same thing. Netflix has the same thing. A lot of these companies have these little R&D departments, but they're inside of
Yeah.
streaming media, inside of social media platform. Google's is a little more diverse because they're basically just a tech company now.
So
But-
I started seeing this one commercial for like Fitbit. I didn't know that they got bought by Google.
Yeah.
Dang, what a payday.
Yeah, for sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And how much it comes back at the end of the day too, like how many things between just Google and Amazon, if we did nobody else between Google and Amazon, how many different companies do they own now? And then you add Facebook, and then you start stacking in some of these other companies, Disney and
Well, and when because they use the Apple example so many times throughout the book, right?
Right.
You all like just thinking about that, about the space between the phone and the laptop, and then they create the
that
iPad
middle space.
category and stuff like that. You almost have to detach from the way that you're looking at it and purposefully kind of reorient yourself at like 90 degrees to how you were looking at it if you really want a shot at creating a category based upon like a market need, right? As opposed to just like, what people need, I know what people like. No, you've already gotten in your own way. Probably
you could write an entire book, and I'm not just being glib, an entire book on the phrase different but not better, because there's just so much there to think about in that statement, and which is why Joshua's example exists. It's because they did better. They probably didn't do different.
Agreed.
And let's say they did do different. They didn't understand.
Different is uncomfortable. Like
It is.
different doesn't get the easy approval from like multiple people. Like you
No,
need like and
it's a fight
that
for it.
maybe I did like this book and I just don't think that I did because I can't like it's like looming in my head like and
Well, it's like Marcus Aurelius stuff. You're not going to walk away and be like, I have the
that's
plan
true.
for life.
That yeah,
It's
that
like,
it is very much a philosophy book, right?
yeah,
Of how you think about, your business. Um the gravity of the whole thing, and because they said that and I was like, yeah, okay. And then they kept talking about it and I was like, yeah, that is true, right? Like there are weeks where I don't do anything on Sherpa as far as like the product itself because I'm just so busy like having calls and having meetings, getting everything else done. And then on Friday I look up and I'm just mad at myself because I'm not put in the time,
yeah, yeah,
iterating and updating my own stuff.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
the lightning strike seems to be the biggest catalyst for like making that thing go well, and probably the least substanced
Oh yeah, it's
chapter.
that was the consultative play because
Yeah,
they specifically left it the most ambiguous
yeah.
so that you would call them and help with that.
Yeah,
Um,
just plan something 3 to 6 months out and like, oh,
and then do it
huh?
every 3 months, and it's got to be huge, and it needs
Yeah,
to be
yeah, it's
this,
gotta
and
be
it can't be
huge.
that.
Yeah, no one does that a second time unless the first one goes off smashingly well, right?
Right, right.
So,
Yeah, proof of
yeah,
concept for sure. Yeah,
it's a
and
very
even the
interesting book.
examples they gave were like there was an element of just I don't know if chance is probably right, but like something happened while they were at this event that didn't they
Yes.
expect to happen, or like 2
Yeah.
days before something happened, and in all the examples.
Yes.
So it's like
Yeah,
so you're really nimble and you're really clear
and you're really
and you have
lucky.
lots of resources.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, and that's where at the end. So at work, it's one of the books that's on our library, and we do a book report. And one of the questions that we say it says in there, is there anything in the book that you didn't agree with? Like, what did you not agree with in the book? And I was like, this isn't for everybody. And they didn't
Yeah.
say it was, but they certainly make it appear reachable if you do enough work.
Yeah.
Whereas it's just not for everyone.
Yeah, I don't think it's for I don't I think it's I think if you're not a SaaS, it's harder, right? Because like
Easier in SaaS, that's for sure.
because you've got these huge teams and everything. I want to see the version of that book for like small business.
Yeah, I don't think it's for small business.
Yeah.
And we
I
would
I also
define
don't
small
think it's
business,
for
but
I think it's for like super early stage or I want to do this eventually someday. I think that those are the people who are going to get the most from the book as far as like right time, right place. But I also think that they're not going to get hardly any much out of the book because they've not actually like done any of this stuff yet. And that like I can look back and see the amount of times that I've tried to like make myself better as opposed to different in some of
yeah.
my like positioning and outreach and stuff like that. And now that I'm, the sales coach for like introverts and creatives,
Mhm.
that's me putting myself into a different category
Right,
that lines up with my best outcomes and everything else like that. So
right.
not trying to be better than Dan Locke or Grant Cardone or Sandler or any of those other things, but my stuff is different and it speaks to a certain audience. And if you're in that audience, I'm probably one of the few people that can help you with this stuff. That's
Yeah,
okay. You know.
yeah, exactly.
So
And to me, that's just positioning. That's really good positioning. It's understanding your strengths and finding the right people for that. That's what all those books that know what they're talking about. They do it well. Will tell you.
mhm.
It's like that's why I think different is rare air. I just
Agreed.
different is different. Like if you write a manifesto yourself about this thing in your life that you were so passionate about that needs to change,
Mhm.
you're on the right path. Like to me, that's where play bigger makes sense. Like, yes, you need to think about play bigger, but that's just my kind of initial thoughts. Like, if I thought about it more, I could probably, but I'm just like, this is not for most people.
Well, like part of my process from this stage forward is the books that are I read a lot, right? And so certain concepts will continue to show up right in my
Mhm.
conversations with people as I'm talking about sales and marketing with them. And
Yep.
so that's really kind of my lasting guide of like whether a book is great or not because I read it and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, like this makes sense, but I never use any of that stuff in my conversations with other people when I'm coaching or teaching.
Mhm.
How good of a book was it? You know?
Well, it wasn't great for you, but maybe it was great for somebody else.
Sure, right? And I can, I'm not saying that if I hate it, it's garbage or something like this, but is
Yeah,
it is
I
it
get
something that will continue to be referenced? Is it something that's lightweight enough, right? In that idea, you don't need to be different, or I'm sorry, you don't need to be better, you need to be different, will probably be something that we kind of,
yeah,
at least for me anyway. Okay,
yeah,
how are
yeah,
you? Okay, so you lost to this competitor. How are you different than that competitor? And how do you build a question to figure out if that is in line with what they want or not? Right. Oh, well, we lost to the bigger guy. Okay, great. Ask a question about whether or not they want to work with a big guy or a small guy. So that way you
right,
save yourself time.
right.
Right. It's that stuff. So this very well could be a book that ends up hitting the top shelf. That's got my little Christmas
Mhm, mhm.
decoration on it.
Oh,
By the
nice.
way, it's a top hat. Um, so it might hit the top shelf because like it might be something that I reference and talk about a lot when I'm working with clients, but it might not be. So that's kind of a way I'm trying to get into like thinking about books long term, not my like immediate reaction to it.
Mm,
Because at this stage, and you and I have talked about this, I've read lots of these books, sales,
mm,
marketing, business books, right? I shouldn't be reading a book at this stage around business in any format that is completely like, oh my God, I've never seen this before. Like it just doesn't
right.
happen, right? So if I can get 2 to 3 nuggets that stay with me,
Yeah,
that indicates that there's some lasting power to the book, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah. And it's like you going to kung fu, and you don't
Hmm.
need to know first forms. It just it's I've seen it, I've done it, I've repped it,
Yeah.
I've taught it. So you're not looking for that when you go. And as long as you know, it's good. Yeah, Traction, absolutely. Traction's a great book. Yeah, also on my
Do you mean Wickman? Gino Wickman? Is there another Traction that I'm not aware of?
uh I don't
Because
know.
I got hold on, I got
Joshua,
this
let us
one.
know. Yeah, the one I'm thinking of is it has a whole system. It's like EOS or
This
like
guy? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that's Gino Wickman.
yeah. That's a very good one. A lot of companies have jumped into that. Scaling up is the one. That's the system that my company uses. That's
I haven't
that's
even heard
their
of that.
true north. Yeah, it's well. I mean, if you've read EOS and you've read Traction and you've read, they're all very similar.
Hmm.
It's good. It has its own unique twist on it, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's they're all trying to tell you how to create the correct roles in your leadership to
Yes.
make sure that you're not dropping the ball and everyone has a lane and responsibility and a feedback loop that will always help you move forward.
And what's crazy is for like you and I like 12-week year, I know lots of EOS coaches. I know lots of people who work in that system. Every one of these systems is fundamentally break down big, huge goals into smaller goals.
Right.
Every one of them has this thing. Like, okay, what is your sprint? What is your thing? Blah blah blah. I'm an author, Josh. Selling from scratch. If you want to take a look at it, but it's everything. Take the big goal, chunk it down into as small a goals as possible, so that way you can forecast well and know where you are. Every
Right.
one of them is about clarity in the role.
Yep.
So figure out what these people should be doing and why they should be doing these things, and then report back, collaborate, and communicate well. That is that
And
that
yes,
is
big
that
difference.
is traction. That is four disciplines of execution. That is 12-week year.
Yep.
Like just find one and do it. Like I was talking, and
Hmm.
I've done a version of this right way back in the day, but I was talking to someone now, and they're like trying to read like 3 different books, and I'm like, you have your foot in 3 different boats. You need to find one that
Yeah.
speaks to you
Yeah.
or helps you build a system that you will then use and go read that thing. Like
Right.
none of these things are silver bullets.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like my first dip in that water was Four Disciplines of Execution,
Same
4DX,
here. Yeah. That
and that
that blew my mind. BHAGs and all that stuff. I was like,
leading and
oh God.
lagging
Yeah.
and like
Oh,
whoa.
yeah.
Yes,
Blew my
blew my
mind.
face
Right.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh 12-week year was a little bit tighter, right?
Mhm.
Traction feels a little bit more loose than those
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
Um, you know, there's a version of this for like sales activities in Sandler, that I spent a lot of time learning about and everything. So
Mhm.
yeah, like, but they're all fundamentally the same. Like break down your big goal into leading activities, count those
Yep.
activities, know how
Yep.
much effort it takes to get to the outcome, and do those things over and over and over again.
Right.
And
And
then
measure and improve.
yeah, then make it like really, really, really easy for someone else to follow those instructions
Right.
and get
So
the
that you
same
can
outcome. Like
step
that's
away.
the important part. Everyone's like, I'm just going to go hire a salesperson. Okay, cool. Do they have instructions? No.
Hmm.
Cool.
Yeah.
That person's probably going to fail.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to fail because you can't even tell them what they should be doing.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Yep.
oh, we had a cool thing, and I told you this, but I think that this is something cool to talk about on the show. So one of the goals for this year was to do a newsletter, to launch a newsletter for Adaptive Growth. And
Oh yeah.
it's been just a busy year. I haven't really gotten it done. And also wanted to build it in a way that wasn't 100% my time or my editor's time, right? And also if I can create a job and give someone a job who wants to write the newsletter, that would be huge. So been working with this person, and we decided to do an experiment, right? So I do a paid experiment with people to see if we can work together and if we like the stuff. So paid for the work. You should pay for experiments. People don't assume that people are excited to work for you for free, because nobody is. Pay for
And you all get
experiments.
the same work.
Yeah. And the first version that she gave us wasn't what we were looking for. I'm not going to say it was good or bad. It just wasn't what we were looking for. And the reason why it wasn't there was because we didn't give good enough instructions, right? So we'd already gone through like a branding kind of guide internally, Melissa and I had. And so we had given her just that and decided, hey, try it out. And we weren't happy with it. And so we kind of had this moment of frustration of like, man, thought this was going to work. And then I had just enough bandwidth to be like, you know what? The instructions are bad. We need to give her better instructions. So we went through the branding guide again, tightened it up, gave her some actual examples about like the emails that we both enjoy reading and what we like about them. Next version, so good. So freaking good. And I was just so excited, right? Because like it could have gone the other way, right? You do all this work, you update the instructions, you get a piece back that still isn't very good, and it's kind of like, well, okay, blah blah blah, and then you really have to go and question yourself: are we doing a good job with this kind of documentation and setting expectations kind of situation? But the fact that it came back amazing was awesome. Like that was a huge win last week. That improvement from the first rep to the second rep is so massive. You don't have to overthink it. You just have to be a little bit thoughtful, a little bit intentional, and then do it again. Like speed to that second rep, I think, is way more important than trying to get perfection on the second rep.
Yes.
That was a very interesting kind of milestone last week.
Yeah.
So
that's fun.
That was
fun to see it go that
exactly, because like people talk about this all the time, right? Around like really great scorecards, really great role descriptions, really great clarity in the role and stuff like that. Part of that is giving people clear expectations, good examples, and very clear instructions. And yeah, it's hard to do. It's hard to want to do, because it's just so easy to be like, oh, they don't get it. No, what did you miss? Oh, I missed.
Yes.
Maybe they need some examples of like emails that I actually would read. That might be helpful. Idiot.
To me, this is the best use case of something like meditation for leaders, because you can't get to a headspace to go, what did I do wrong here? Could I have possibly screwed up? Unless you somehow sit down and think about yourself and go, what could I have done differently?
Yeah.
So it's just a lot of times you'll hear, the not the arguments, but like the explanation of how that works well in leaders, and you don't hear like really good practical examples. Like this is like a perfect example. You were able to go, well, what could I change? Let's start with me.
Yeah, I think a year and a half ago, I would have been like, yep, this isn't going to work. And I just would have paid them, the experiment fee. And I just would have been like, hey, it's not going to fit. Thank you so much. And I wouldn't have actually given them any actionable feedback that would have made them better, which looking back on would kind of suck, right? If I was the person on the receiving end of that stuff.
Sure.
So
can I get feedback? I'm like, yeah, it sucked. Sorry.
yeah. Just not what I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's not helpful to anybody, not even yourself in those situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to do, because I think probably until about a year ago, I think that my default response would have been like, okay, cool. Like, let's just shut this thing down. It's not working. I don't think I would have continued to try to like tweak it to where it could work. So growth. Hooray.
Growth. Yay.
Yeah.
Less dumb today. Also.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. 1% better, maybe.
Exactly. All those things.
All right. So you got to go.
Yep. Got 8:30. So,
Awesome.
Let's see. So next Monday we'll be back around, and we'll be talking about this some more.
Still no
Uh,
Fridays. Do we want to go ahead and move the Friday to like the afternoons now, so that way we can like
yeah, we can do that.
get in the practice of that, or do you think we should just kind of wait and launch with
Hmm.
intention?
Yeah, let's discuss. Let's
Okay.
discuss. We might be back Friday, but in the new world, and we're thinking January.
Mhm.
You know, it'll be Monday and Friday live, and Wednesday
Wednesday will be a
episode
podcast
will
you can
go.
listen to whenever and wherever you would like.
Yes,
And
exactly.
then on Fridays, we're going to rip at the shreds in the name of improvement.
Yes,
It's going to be awesome.
mostly ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
exactly. You know, because like this is the skill set that we're working on is how do we become better interviewers, creators, you know, thought leaders and stuff like that. And part of that is putting yourself into those conversations. So yeah, if we do a good job of that, we'll be in rarefied territory, I would say. Not different, but better.
Not yet. Okay, so we're still trying to get better. Well, we'll do different.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I did find that book, by the way. It is an older book. It looks like the Traction one. How any startup can achieve explosive customer growth.
Oh wow. Okay, cool. I'm gonna go look for that one. I thought it was talking about the Gino Wickman one. Interesting.
Yeah, different book. So
Thanks for Josh for coming and hanging out. Thanks for
Yeah.
Mike Tao. Josh, really good insight, man. I'm sorry that happened at the last company you were with. But like this stuff happens. People get excited about a new thing in the space and they pour a bunch of like effort and time into it and then didn't get anything. And since no one set any kind of like lost benchmark,
Right.
people are going to wait 2 months and they'll be like, hey, we should try that whole thing again. You know?
Yeah. Why didn't that work? Did
Yeah.
we ever talk about that?
It's gonna work this time. It's gonna work
Right.
this time because we're better. Yeah.
Yeah. We're better now.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, I will chat with you offline, and then possibly everyone else on Friday. I'll also Dylan, thanks for hopping in too, and
Mike Tao, good to see you,
Tao,
sir.
and we will see everyone later on. So,
Absolutely. Enjoy
right.
your days. Enjoy your week back after Thanksgiving if you're in the US.
Yep, for sure. Absolutely. All
Cheers,
right, thanks,
Bill.
Al. All right, talk to you later, Bill.